Meet Abe, the official mascot of Indiana's bicentennial. You can learn more about Abe, a woodland bison, and all sorts of other Indiana history when you visit the Indiana State Capitol.
We're checking off another state capitol as we visit the Indiana Statehouse in Indianapolis that was opened in 1888.
This is actually Indiana's third statehouse building. The first one was just a little teeny tiny thing, and it was part of the Northwest Territory in the Indiana Territory. Then they built a second one in this exact location, but it was essentially wood and stucco. And while it was really pretty, it didn't last very long and it started to deteriorate. So they commissioned an architect and raised the funds and built this gorgeous new building, which luckily they restored in the 1980s-ish, I think they said, back to its original 1888 grandeur, which you can kind of see behind us.
It had gone through a lot of trials and tribulations over the years, much like we're used to in our Michigan State Capitol. They ended up putting cubicles all along these main hallways, and they had just done all kinds of things. At one point on two of the floors, they removed the original chandeliers and put in fluorescent lighting. So I don't know what people were thinking, but it happens in every state apparently. But this building has now been restored. It is gorgeous. They've done a really nice job with the restoration, and there's still a lot of original things here. The chandeliers on the fourth floor are still original, so there's a lot of neat stuff to see in this building from a history standpoint.
The Indiana Statehouse is one of the largest state capitol buildings by size, and one of only 8 left that still has all 3 branches of government: executive, judicial, and legislative.
It is interesting to see all the offices still in this building, but I guess one of the things that stood out to me, and a lot of times we'll do that, like, what's your first impression? What do you notice about it? It's huge. This capitol is really, really large, and I think it shows when you see how many of the government offices they still have here. So that's one of the things that stood out to me. I don't know, what was one of the first things that you got an impression of?
For me, the light. And as you can see behind this gorgeous skylight, and that's on both ends of the building. And one of the main features of this building was how much light they wanted to let in. So the big windows in all the outside offices, the skylights, the dome glass ceiling, everything. They wanted this to be natural lighting to kind of show off the marble and the architecture inside. And so that is very different from like our Michigan Capitol, which is gorgeous but very dark. I love the lighting in here.
Well, and you mentioned the stained glass in the dome. It does have a dome on this capitol, which not all state capitals do, as we have found. But when you're in the rotunda, you see the stained glass. You don't see up into the dome itself. So that's kind of an interesting architectural decision that they made here. That really stood out to me. You mentioned the windows and all the natural lighting. One thing that's very interesting here, though, is back in, I think they said, the 1940s, the House and Senate chambers were changed significantly. They used to be about twice the size that they are now, and all the senators and representatives who are part-time in Indiana had a working desk in those chambers. And then when the telephone arrived, they all wanted a little more privacy and a little more peace. And so they actually ended up building a box within the chamber. So they built 4 walls around the chamber, and you have a much smaller chamber now for the Senate and for the House. And then around the outside, towards the original outer walls, are offices.
Yeah, she said they call it now the horseshoe, and that's where the senators and staff and legislators and staff can go. And because they're only part-time, they're not in use very often, but they each have a legislative aide that is full-time. And so those people are here full-time, year-round, doing whatever it is that they, working on legislative stuff. But yeah, that was really crazy because like the Senate seemed really small, and we walked into the House chamber and she goes, "This is the largest room in the Capitol." And we're looking around going, it's not very big, until she told us that's because it had been boxed in. Couple just interesting tidbits that we learned on the guided tour. There are about 200 fireplaces here in the Capitol. And I don't think any of them are actually in use anymore because they don't need them for heat, because now they have modern plumbing and electricity and heat and everything. But this Capitol originally was designed with both electric and gas elements. It was kind of that time where things were starting to come into play. And so all of the chandeliers originally were designed with both gas and electric options. And there's a little tidbit that says any of the upturned fixtures on the chandeliers were the gas, and the downturned fixtures are the electric lights. And although not all of them are original. The ones on the fourth floor still are, so you can look at those. But it's just really cool. And all the marble and the woodwork, they tried to get as much of it from Indiana as possible. So there's a handful of things that came from, like the marble statues came from Italy, and a few things came from Vermont. But any of the granite and the stonework, as much as they could, was quarried here in Indiana.
You brought up chandeliers again. One of the most original rooms in the building is the Supreme Court room, where even the wooden chairs and the bench and everything are original to the 1888 opening. And that has the heaviest chandelier in the building. It's solid brass, and she said it weighs in at 1,500 pounds.
Yeah.
So they like big, heavy stuff. We got to go into the governor's office. They have a beautiful table in there with inlaid wood and carved. That weighs 900 pounds without the legs. She said when they've had to take it in and out of the building for various reasons, it takes 12 men to carry that thing in and out of this building.
I'm surprised only 12 for the size and the weight of this table. But yeah, gorgeous. It's like a whole wood inlaid. It's every county in Indiana plus like the state seal and the symbol on the flag. Oh, that was gorgeous. And
that makes me think of, we always think about, again, what stands out to us. This Capitol seems to have a lot of artwork in terms of busts and reliefs and carvings and just all kinds of things on the inside and the outside. So if you do come to the Indiana Statehouse, make sure you take some time to wander and just sort of stare at the walls and look up a lot, and you'll notice a lot of things that are kind of built into this building.
Despite all the capitals we visited, it never ceases to amaze how unique each one of them is. And whether it's the stained glass in the dome, or it's the marble, or it's the light, or it's just the original fixtures, I'm always just enthralled by how well taken care of they are. Well, at least now, because we've all kind of gotten this restoration idea that we should keep our state houses and state capitals looking gorgeous and inviting people to visit. There's 4 acres of paint in this building, and they said they brought in art students to help repaint it after the restoration and make the original stencils to recreate that 1888 appearance. And I'm just so glad they did, because that 1970s with the plaster and the cubes and everything, that's just not representative of what we think of should be stately state government. So this building is now stately state government, and I really like it.
The tour guide was telling us that when the art students came in order to figure out what the original paint and color was, they had to strip 25 layers of paint off the walls, because over the years, with the gas lighting and the soot from that and the fireplaces and people smoking in the building, and when things got dirty, they just painted over it. So that was a lot of work to do that. But the Indiana Statehouse is definitely one to check out. They've done a wonderful job with the restoration. There's a lot of cool things to see here. Do a guided tour if you can. That was really good. She had a lot of history to share with us. So as always, we recommend state capitals, but definitely the Indiana Statehouse should be on that list. In the meantime, keep on trekking.
And we'll see you out there.
Real quick tip when you're done at the Indiana Statehouse, if you want to head into the city to get some food or do a little shopping, you can get there from the Capitol without ever stepping foot outside if it's cold out.
There's a cool tunnel that runs from the Capitol to sort of like downtown Indianapolis. Now, you can only take it one way if you're a visitor. You can leave the Capitol and head down here. Now, if you're an employee, you can have your badge and badge back in. But there's restaurants and shopping and all sorts of things downtown. So I guess on your lunch break or after work, just pop through the tunnel and here you are out on the streets of Indianapolis.